January of 2016 to April of 2018, I have undergone 8 surgeries. I've had over 200 procedures and appointments because of my pre-existing condition. All of this totaling $362,686.55. Other than my monthly insurance premium of about $250, I have only paid $4,000 out of pocket. In my eyes, this saved my life. I really do think this is pretty affordable. If you have, I would have never considered getting tested if pre-existing conditions were not covered under the Affordable Care Act. Sorry, guys.
Medicare for all.
Right.
Yeah.
To make sure people with pre-existing conditions are protected as part of the Affordable Care Act, my family would have gone broke, my business would have gone bankrupt, and I would not have been able to expand my business and open a new one just last year. I'm proud that leaders like Tammy and Bernie are fighting so hard to make sure that we're able to affordable and quality health care. Hello, my name is Jessica Green. I'm a veteran, honor, and member of the team. Wisconsin has been proud of election. So many services. Yeah. It's going to take all of us going out knocking on doors, getting on the phone, and talking to our neighbors from now through November. So please, with a strong tradition, please today find someone with my grandparents. They can help you get involved because the stakes are way too high to sit out this election.
Or on the home front.
I urge you guys to re-elect Tammy Baldwin in November to protect the interests of health and Wisconsin families.
Like so many others, stepping up to serve our country, and I wanted to do my part. I served in the Army for 10 years, deployed to both Afghanistan and Iraq. I rose to the position of Sergeant First Class in just 7 years, and I became the first woman in the Ho-Chunk Nation to receive the Bronze Star. I faced a life-threatening medical condition. Luckily, I was able to get the care I needed through my Ho-Chunk Nation clinic. But tragically, not all veterans have that luxury. That's why I'm glad to see Tammy working to do right by our veterans and their families to make sure they can get the best care possible. Tammy has led bipartisan efforts to improve our health care in the VA and in our communities. She wrote and passed Jason's Law to reform the VA's opioid prescribing guidelines, expand treatment options, and strengthen oversight. After my service, I enrolled in a veteran to farmer training program to become an organic farmer. Yeah. That's why I'm proud that beyond just healthcare, Tammy is working to help connect veterans with good paying jobs. And she's leading efforts to protect active duty service members and their families from unfair eviction, exploitative debt collection practices, and other fraudulent schemes. Tammy will do whatever it takes to get the job done for our veterans, and that's why she is the top target for powerful special interests. They are spending millions in attack ads against Tammy because they want Washington to keep working for them and not for us. They are pushing to privatize the VA, but Tammy is standing up and protecting our health care. We need to keep Tammy in the Senate so she can continue doing her job and doing right by Wisconsinites. Thank you.
Medicare is affordable.
Baldwin.
You are. I am so proud to be joined here today by Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie is a tireless and fearless fighter for hardworking families. I could not ask for a better partner in the Senate to join me in standing up to powerful special interests, whether it's fighting for affordable health care for all, standing up for workers and pensions, holding Wall Street and the big banks accountable, or strengthening the VA for all of our veterans. Bernie knows the stakes are high this November. But look, Washington is a mess. Woo! Yeah. The cable news shout fests, the early morning tweet storms, the nasty attack ads.
Storm and Daniels.
When Washington isn't working, it means it's our families, our neighbors, and our friends who pay the price. So let me tell you this. Washington is working for some. It's working well for a group of folks that have powerful connections, the special interests. Time and time again, they call the shots to keep the system rigged in their favor. And that's what's at stake this year. Are we going to let special interests run roughshod over Wisconsin? No! Or are we going to rise up, speak out, and demand that Washington starts working for us? I need you all to be engaged in this fight. Each and every one of you can and will make a difference this year. The future for Wisconsinites hangs in the balance. The stakes are so high. Look no further than the cynical Republican efforts to take people's health care away. That effort was backed by Washington's most powerful special interests and their bought and paid for politicians. Their healthcare sabotage and repeal plans could mean millions more uninsured and will put an age tax on Wisconsinites over the age of 50. And the Trump administration is still trying to scrap protections for people with pre-existing medical conditions. Well,
Don't crow.
you didn't send me to Washington to take people's health care away.
No.
I pushed to allow kids to stay on their parents' health insurance until they're 20. And now, millions more young people have health care coverage. And as someone who personally was once labeled as a child with a pre-existing health condition, I know how important it is that we make sure that no one ever again is denied coverage because they've been sick in the past, because they have a pre-existing condition. Together, we stood up, we spoke out, and we shared our stories to stop the health care bill in its tracks. We won this fight before against the repeal effort, but we cannot let up. And the stakes are high for Wisconsin workers who want good paying jobs, created here in America and not overseas. Bernie and I are pushing for Buy America requirements to make sure that our taxpayer dollars go towards buying American and hiring American. In fact, when President Trump visited Wisconsin last year, he told us that he backed my Buy American water infrastructure plan 100%. Now that's bipartisanship. But then what happened? Multinational corporations, they called in a few favors from their friends in Congress. They blocked my efforts. And yet again, Donald Trump dropped the ball for hardworking Wisconsin families. But I'm not giving up, Bernie's not giving up, and you're not giving up. We are not going to stop standing up for Wisconsin workers. And then look at the tax plan that special interests push through the Congress of the United States. More than 80% of the tax breaks go to the wealthiest 1% and big corporations like Exxon and Wells Fargo and drug companies like Pfizer, even though they were making massive profits already. And how do these special interests intend to pay for this new tax law? By cutting Medicare, Social Security, and even threatening nursing home care for our loved ones who need it. And the stakes couldn't be higher for the American people as the Senate reviews President Trump's nominee for Supreme Court. So, after reviewing the nominee's record, it's crystal clear that powerful special interests in Washington selected Judge Brett Kavanaugh to work on the Supreme Court for them and not the people of Wisconsin. We cannot afford a nominee who could serve as the deciding vote on the Supreme Court to allow employers to deny their workers health insurance coverage for birth control, who could rip protections away from people with pre-existing conditions, who could overturn Roe versus Wade and put a woman's health and right to choose at risk, who would aid the EPA in gutting clean air and clean water protections, gut vital constitutional rights and freedoms for all Americans. And boy, if you hope that the Supreme Court is going to overturn Citizens United anytime soon, don't hold your breath. The people of Wisconsin need a fair, impartial, independent Supreme Court justice who will stand up for them and not just the powerful interests. I'm voting no. I'm going to need your help in this fight. So, that's what's at stake this year. Powerful special interests are spending millions and millions of dollars to beat me because they want a bought and paid for senator. These out-of-state billionaires, they think they can buy a Senate seat, as if they weren't getting enough from Washington already. They don't want somebody who will put Wisconsin first. They want somebody who will do their bidding in Washington, whether it's taking away people's health care, or privatizing the Veterans Administration, or gutting Social Security and Medicare, or gifting more tax breaks to the wealthy and well-connected. That's why out-of-state special interests have made me their top target target, yes, their top target. They know that I'll stand up to anyone, no matter how powerful.
Yeah.
I'll sit down with anyone, no matter their party, if it means that we finally get the job done. They know I'll do whatever it takes to put Wisconsin first. They know I'll stand up for the Wisconsinites who spoke earlier in this program. Les Danielson, a dairy farmer from Chippewa County, who is working with me to make sure that the Farm Bill helps our Wisconsin farmers through very, very tough times. Aaron Klaus, an Eau Claire small business owner. Who has a pre-existing health condition and needs Washington to keep its word about protecting her care. And Jessica Greendeer, a leader in the Ho-Chunk Nation and a U.S. Army veteran who has earned and deserves only the highest quality health care. The stakes are high for them. The stakes are high for all of us. And that's what this is all about. It's about my family and your family and your neighbors' families. It's about all of us. And it's going to take all of us. Powerful special interests have already spent over $10 million to try to beat me. They are pouring in more money against me than any other Democratic senator up for re-election this year. But I have something these special interests don't. The impact that you can have, that we can have. You own that win. That's what it's going to take to win in this election. We need your help. And you can pull out your phones right now and join our Grassroots team right now at TammyBaldwin.com/join. That's TammyBaldwin.com/join. We need to make our voices heard. We need to organize. We need to make sure everybody gets out and votes. We can't let them buy our state. We can't let them take away our voices and put in a bought and paid for politician. This year, let's organize. Let's take the fight to them. Bernie knows the stakes. So, stand with Bernie and me, and let's put these Washington special interests on notice.
Tammy and I agree on almost every issue, but there is one profound difference, I'll put it out there, that we have. She continues to believe that Wisconsin cheddar cheese is better than Vermont cheddar cheese. I'm following it. I've been working on it. But in a more serious note, she knows and I know that dairy farmers all over this country are struggling, and we've got to do everything we can to protect our family farmers. This is a wonderful turnout, and I thank all of you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Because you know and I know that it is enormously important that we re-elect to the United States Senate one of the smartest, hardest working, and progressive members, Tammy Baldwin. Tammy just told you a moment ago something that is profoundly true. Tammy is a great senator, and she's a great candidate, and she's an incredibly hard worker.
You should
But-
hear President Biden!
Well, this is going to be an interesting morning, I can see that. But Tammy, or I, and nobody can do it alone. And what we talk about, what I talk about, is not just the need to win elections, but it is to bring about a political revolution, and you guys are the revolutionaries. And that means we can't say, hey Tammy, you know, here's $5, or here Tammy, I'm gonna vote for you and you're on your own. That can't be enough. All of us have got to get up and do everything we can in every way. In every way to elect Tammy. You know, in 2014, in the United States of America, in my state of Vermont, we had the lowest voter turnout in 70 years. Nationally, about 36% of the American people voted. And when billionaires like the Koch brothers, who apparently like, now you can tell how good a senator is in Tammy by how much money the Koch brothers are spending trying to get rid of him. All right, you asked. I'll say a word about the Koch brothers. If you ask, here's the important point. People don't really get this. Often the media will say the Koch brothers are a conservative organization that spends a lot of money on campaigns. True. Koch brothers, in fact, are, I think, the second or third wealthiest family in America. They will spend nationally some $400 million in this campaign trying to elect candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful.
We're gonna make 400 million calls.
But the point is, what media doesn't talk about very often is, fine, they're going to spend a whole lot of money, they're very, very conservative, okay, we got that. What do they really stand for? Well, this is what they stand for. What they believe, and which is the direction that the Republican Party has been moving in years because of their influence, this is what they believe. They believe that the federal government should play virtually no role in social policy. That means that when you are old, you should not have that terrible, horrible program called Social Security. Because we don't want the big bad federal government to enslave you in a Social Security program. You don't need Medicare or Medicaid or the Veterans Administration because the government is terrible and awful and we've got to privatize every major government program. That is what they believe. And that is the direction in which they have taken the Republican Party. It is no accident that right now you have leading Republicans, Paul Ryan and many others. Your homeboy, Paul Ryan. $1 trillion in tax breaks for the top 1%, Ryan and the others come forward and they say, gee, the deficit is going up. Oh my God. We've got to do something about that climbing deficit. Oh, I got a great idea. They say, this is what Ryan says. I will give Ryan credit for being upfront about it. After running up the deficit by giving tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations, they then decide that the path forward is to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, I don't believe that that is what the people of Vermont want, what the people of Wisconsin want, what the people of any state in this country want. By the way, before I go further, let me thank many of you in this room and the people of Wisconsin for the support you gave me in the 2016. What the support of the other 21 states that we won meant. It meant that ideas, which used to be considered to be fringe ideas or radical ideas, because of your support are now mainstream ideas supported by the Americans. Thank you very much. Let me be for a moment, in a sense, non-political in saying this. Obviously, in Wisconsin, Vermont, all over this country, people have very different political points of view, and that's called democracy, and that's called America, and that's just fine. But one of the things that I think distresses many people, whether they are conservative or whether they are progressive, is the fact that as a parent, I have 4 kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren. Many of you have kids and grandchildren. And we try very hard to bring up our kids to be honest, to tell the truth, to be respectful of other people, not to be bullies. And it is an embarrassment, no matter what your political point of view may be, that we have a president, and it gives me no pleasure to say this, because Tammy will tell you, she and I have conservative friends in the Senate who disagree with us every day, but they are not liars. They believe in what they believe. And it is a national embarrassment and such a disservice to our country that we have a president who is a pathological liar, probably really doesn't know the difference between truth. And I say this, there are people like that.
And he's Russian!
But what that does, that consistent lying, it makes it so hard for us to have an honest political debate when you have the leader of this country distorting reality single day. But it is not only his lying, but his tendency to be a bully. Some of you may have read a few weeks ago, after this terrible situation in the southern border, that Trump said it was a sign of quote-unquote strength to tear little babies from the arms of their mothers. I say to President Trump, that is not an indication of strength, that is an indication of moral weakness. the arms of their mothers is not what this country is about, and we will not let it ever be about that. Let me say a few words to some of the people, perhaps here, who voted for Donald Trump for president. When Donald Trump ran for president, he said that he was going to be a defender of working families. He said that in Wisconsin, he said that in Vermont, and he said that all over this country. Some of you may recall here in Wisconsin, that candidate, Donald Trump, said, well, I am going to work to provide health care to everybody. Remember that? Everybody. Well, Tammy and I agree. But after the election, he was no longer talking about providing health care to everybody. What he was supporting is a disastrous piece of legislation that would have thrown 32 million Americans off of the health care they currently have. Can you imagine hard-working people in Wisconsin and Vermont who now have health insurance suddenly losing that insurance, not knowing what to do when illness strikes their parents, themselves, or their kids? Donald Trump said, you all recall, and I remember this distinctly, he said, hey, I am a different type of Republican. Remember that? He said, I'm not Paul Ryan, as a matter of fact. I'm a different type. I am not going to cut Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security. That's what he told the American people, and he lied. Because he came forward with a budget last year that Tammy and I vigorously opposed that would have cut Medicaid by $1 trillion over 10 years, Medicare by $500 billion, and Social Security disability insurance by many, many billions of dollars. Donald Trump said during his campaign, he said, I am going to push for tax reform that will not benefit billionaires like me. It's only going to benefit the middle class and the working families. Well, shock of all shock, Donald Trump lied again. As Tammy said, 83% of the benefits are going to go over a 10-year period to the top 1%. Now, there are many things going on in this country, but one thing that is damn sure is that at a time when we have the 3 wealthiest people owning more wealth than the bottom half of the American people, when we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality that are worse today than in any time since the 1920s, one thing is absolutely certain. Billionaires and large profitable corporations do not need huge tax breaks to be followed by cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This is a president who, when he campaigned for office, he said, I am going to take on Wall Street. Really? And that is why he pushed for the deregulation of major banks, which is going to move us in the direction of, once again, in years to come, another Wall Street collapse, and why he has brought into his administration more billionaires than any president in the history of this country. That is not draining the swamp. That is bringing the swamp into D.C. Now, needless to say, Tammy and I disagree with all of those reactionary policies designed to make the very, very rich richer at the expense of everybody else. But there is something about Trump's efforts that go even deeper than tax breaks for billionaires and trying to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and education, and nutrition. And that is, I think, most presidents, I can't think of a president who did otherwise. Most presidents, whether they're conservative, whether they're liberal, progressive, understand that when you're president of the United States, you kind of have a moral responsibility to bring the American people together, bring us together as one nation. And we have now, for the first time, in certainly the modern history of this country, a president who very intentionally is trying to divide us up based on the color of our skin, based on our sexual orientation, based on where we were born, based on our religion, based on our gender. Now I want you all to think for a moment about the history of our country and many other countries. We're not unique in this. And all of the struggles that have taken place for so many years, where brave people stood up, confronting personal danger, confronting jail, confronting lynching, to say that in America, racism and slavery is not acceptable. Think about those struggles. Think about that 100 years ago or so today. Women in America did not have the right to vote because they were second-class citizens. So think about all of the women who stood up and said, you know what, in this country, we will not be second-class citizens. And we think about all of the discrimination that went on for so many years, not only against African Americans and Latinos, but against the Italians, the Irish, the Jews, you name it. That is the history of America. But over that period of time, people stood up and they said, we are going to overcome that type of discrimination. We are going to treat human beings and respond to human beings based on their character, not by their religion, not by where they were born. We say to Donald Trump that this country has gone too far, and too many people have suffered, and too many people have struggled against all forms of discrimination, racial, sexual, religious, country in which they came from. We have struggled too far, and we are not going back. Just tell you something that I see, and I think many of you see going on in this country. Media doesn't necessarily report it effectively, but is all over this country, from coast to coast. We are seeing people standing up and fighting back. We are seeing young people running for office for the first time. And what we are also seeing are things like teachers in some of the most conservative states in this country standing up and saying, you know what, we are going to fight for a decent education for our children. That's what the political revolution is about in conservative states like West Virginia, Oklahoma, Kentucky. Teachers are saying, that we want to make certain that all of our kids get a decent public education. We are seeing young people getting involved in an unprecedented way. I know Tammy and I met with some of the young people from the high school in Parkland, Florida. And it pains, I don't even want to talk about, because you all know what happened. It was such an unspeakable thing, but you can imagine the trauma that those young people experienced on that terrible, terrible day. And those young people had, in a sense, every right to be depressed, to be demoralized. But you know what they did in the wake of that tragedy? They stood up, they fought back, and they have gone all over this country. Saying what the vast majority of the American people believe, gun owners, non-gun owners, that we need common sense gun safety legislation. But it is not only teachers fighting for their kids or young people fighting for safety in schools. Once again, all over this country, we are seeing working people, people in the fast food industry and elsewhere, saying we cannot make it on $7.25 or $8 or $10 an hour. You can't live on those starvation wages. And that is why we are working hard in Congress to make sure that the minimum wage in this country is a living wage, $15 an hour. And this is where you have played a role, where Wisconsin and other states have played a role, because that idea, and this is the main point that I want to make to you, ideas which yesterday seemed radical and crazy today are adopted all across the country. It's not just that we have 30 co-sponsors in the Senate on a $15 an hour minimum wage. More importantly, states and communities all across this country today are adopting $15 an hour legislation. That you in Wisconsin helped bring to fruition. Again, not a radical idea. Wisconsin, as it happens, has been one of historically the leaders in public education in our country. But I think many people in Wisconsin and around this country understand that today, with a changing world, a changing global economy, we have to rethink what public education is about. 50 years ago, public education worked when somebody was able to go to a free public school from kindergarten through 12th grade. But today, if we want our kids to get the good jobs that are out there, they're going to require additional education and training. And that's why all over this country, people now understand that we have got to move to make public colleges and universities tuition free. A few years ago, that was seen as a radical idea. Once again, all over this country, states and communities are moving in exactly that direction. And I have zero doubt that public colleges and universities will become tuition free. The question is how quickly we can bring that about. Is the absolute insanity of a situation where today people in this room and tens of millions of other Americans are dealing with horrific and oppressive student debt. Last I heard, it was not a crime to try to get a good education. And people should not be forced to get out of college or graduate school $50, $100, $200,000 in debt. And if Trump and his friends could support $1 trillion in tax breaks for the top 1%, we damn well can lower student debt in this country. A few years ago, some of us came up with the very, very radical idea that maybe health care was a right and not a privilege. That maybe in the United States of America, we should join every other major country on earth in guaranteeing health care for all people. That maybe it was insane that we spend far more per capita on healthcare, and yet our healthcare outcomes lag behind many other countries. And when you talk about a crazy, dysfunctional healthcare system, understand today that 1 out of 5 Americans who get a prescription from their doctor cannot afford to fill that prescription because the drug companies are ripping us off every single day. That is why Tammy and I and a strong majority of the American people now believe the time is right for a Medicare for all single-payer program. A few years ago, there were a handful of brave voices in this country, groups like Black Lives Matter and a few others, who said we have got to take a hard look at a broken criminal justice system. We have got to ask ourselves, and by the way, it's not just progressives, but conservatives who are looking at this, we have to ask ourselves how in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we have more people in jail today than any other country on earth. How is it that we are spending $80 billion a year to lock fellow Americans up, and we end up having so many people behind bars? And what people are understanding is that it makes a hell of a lot more sense to spend our money on jobs and education rather than jail or incarceration. And despite Trump's rants and raves against immigrants, here is another truth that it's important for you and the people of Wisconsin to understand. And that is, the American people are very, very strongly in favor of comprehensive immigration reform. The last poll that I saw had 80% of the American people in support of legal protection for the 1.8 million young people who were raised in this country who are in the DACA program. Here's my point. My point is that on virtually every major issue, whether it is healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's minimum wage, the American people support our ideas. You go out to your conservative friends, and you ask them whether they think it is a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and then cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And I bet very, very few of them believe that's a good idea. But that is exactly what the Trump Republican agenda is about. So our job, our political job, is to bring our people together around the ideas that are widely supported. And that's where you come in, and that's why it is so important that you do everything that you can to elect Tammy. And let me give you one more reason. I think American people understand what the president does, they understand what Congress does. Many people don't fully understand what the Supreme Court of the United States does. Now, there is profound disgust in this country across the political spectrum about the idea of billionaires buying elections. You go to your conservative friends, and they will say, no, that doesn't make sense. That's not what democracy is supposed to be about. Many people don't know that the reality is that because of a disastrous Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, billionaires are now able to spend unlimited sums of money. Many people don't know that because of a recent Supreme Court decision overruling an important section of the Voting Rights Act, that the day after, literally the day after that Supreme Court decision, you had attorneys general and governors all over this country racing around to figure out how they could suppress the vote, how they could make it harder for poor people, people of color, working people to vote. People don't know that in those states that did not expand Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act, millions of people today lack health insurance because of a Supreme Court decision. And right now, we expect that in the near future, there'll be several major court decisions coming forward. One of them will likely be Roe versus Wade. And I believe, and I know Tammy believes, that there is something a little bit strange when you have a Supreme Court that says it is constitutional for billionaires to buy elections, but it might be unconstitutional for a woman to control her own body. That is, in fact, what some 70% of the American people believe, who do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. Then there's another issue, Tammy touched on it. The American people overwhelmingly, like 90%, think that it would be wrong to once again give insurance companies the power to discriminate against somebody who has cancer or heart disease or diabetes, who has a pre-existing condition. Can you imagine returning to the days when an insurance company would say to a person, hey, why do I want to insure you? You had breast cancer, I'm going to lose money on your case. We are not going back to allowing the insurance company to discriminate against people who have serious illnesses. That's my view, that's your view, that is the view of 90% of the American people. But there will be a case, because the Trump administration now supports defending the right of people not to be discriminated against, defending the right to protect people with pre-existing conditions. There will likely be a Supreme Court case on that issue. I am going to do everything that I can to defeat Judge Kavanaugh from becoming a Supreme Court. I'm going to do what I can to defeat him, because he will, without a doubt, become part of that hard right 5-4 majority, which stands with corporations against working people, insurance companies against the sick, stands for voter suppression. So we have got to do everything that we can to make sure that we have a Supreme Court that honestly looks at cases, not just voting on a political basis. Brothers and sisters, in this unprecedented moment in American history, the stakes are enormously high, not just for you and for me. They are high for our children, our grandchildren, and in terms of climate change, for the future of this planet. That's what they're fighting for. None of us have the luxury of throwing our hands up in despair and say, I'm disgusted, I'm depressed, I'm upset about the situation. The antidote to depression is activism. Now, the big money interests are going after Tammy because she has stood with working people throughout her entire career. It is time for all of us to stand with Tammy and make sure that she realizes